My new neighbors moved in without a trace, then vanished. When the old Thompson house was finally sold, everyone in the neighborhood was curious about the new owners. The place had been vacant for years, ever since old Mr. Thompson passed away. It was a big, creaky house with too much history and not enough care, so when we saw lights on inside one evening, it caught everyone's attention. The house had always been a bit of a neighborhood legend. Kids would dare each other to run up and touch the front door on Halloween, and teenagers told stories of strange noises and flickering lights seen from the street. But most of us dismissed it as just another old house too stubborn to die. Here's the strange part. No one saw them move in. No moving trucks, no cars, nothing. One day the house was empty. The next, it was alive with activity. A soft golden light spilled from the windows, and the faint sound of a piano playing could be heard from the street. I thought it was odd, but chalked it up to the new owners wanting to settle in quietly. Over the next few days, a few neighbors tried to introduce themselves, but no one ever answered the door. It was like the house was occupied, but no one wanted to be found. A week later, they threw a housewarming party. I got an invitation in my mailbox, a fancy card with gold lettering that just said, "Come celebrate." No names, no details, just the date and time. I was hesitant, but curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something wasn't right. Who invites the whole neighborhood without even introducing themselves first? Still, I decided to go, if only to get a glimpse of these mysterious new neighbors. When I arrived, the house was completely transformed. The lawn was immaculate, the paint was fresh, and the windows gleamed like they were brand new. I couldn't believe it. Just days ago, the place had looked like it might collapse in a stiff breeze. The door was wide open, so I walked in, expecting to see people I recognized. But everyone was a stranger, dressed in clothes that looked like they were from another era. The men wore dark suits with pocket watches, and the women had on long dresses and lace gloves. It was like stepping into a different time. The party was lively, but something felt off. The music was old, the kind you'd hear on a gramophone, and the food was all vintage. Deviled eggs, jello molds, and punch served in crystal bowls. I overheard snippets of conversation about things that didn't make sense. References to events from decades ago, as if they had just happened last week. The guests were polite, but distant, as if they were more interested in keeping up appearances than actually getting to know anyone. They smiled at me, but their eyes seemed to look right through me. I tried to ask about the hosts, but no one seemed to know who they were. Every time I brought it up, the conversation would quickly change, as if I'd asked something inappropriate. I even tried to corner one guest, a woman with a wide-brimmed hat and a slightly crooked smile. "Who lives here?" I asked. Her smile faded, and she looked around nervously before saying, "It's best not to ask too many questions." Then she quickly excused herself, leaving me with more questions than answers. After an hour or so, I decided to leave. As I walked out the door, I noticed something odd. There were no cars parked outside, just mine, sitting alone in the driveway. I hadn't noticed it when I arrived, but now it struck me like a cold slap. How did everyone get here? The street was silent, the air thick with a strange stillness. I looked back at the house one last time, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a face watching me from an upstairs window. But when I blinked, it was gone. The next day, I went back to check on the house, but it was empty again. The lawn was overgrown, the windows were dirty, and the paint was peeling. It was like the party had never happened. I asked around, but none of my neighbors had gone to the party or even seen the invitation. Mrs. Miller, who lived directly across the street, swore she hadn't seen a single person go in or out. It was as if I'd imagined the whole thing. I even considered that maybe I had, until I found the invitation still tucked in my coat pocket. I did some digging, visited the local archives, and asked around town, but the more I searched, the less I found. No records of any new owners. No one by the name of Thompson had ever lived there, at least according to official documents. The house itself didn't even appear on some of the older maps. And the strangest part? When I returned a few weeks later to look again, the house was gone. Just an empty lot with a rusted gate that led nowhere. To this day, I don't know who threw that party, or how they managed to disappear without a trace. All I know is that the Thompson house, or whatever it really was, has been empty ever since, and no one's ever dared to go inside again. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I think I can still hear the faint sound of a piano playing in the distance.